Right. Okay. So I think we'll begin anyway, and then stragglers can actually join us as we progress, basically. So firstly, I'd like to say welcome to everybody who's joining us, not just from here from the UK, but across the world. So thanks very much for taking some time out under the extreme conditions that we're living in at the moment. And this is one of the reasons why we did actually set up the Anglo Sikh Virtual Museum, is so that you can actually see objects and see a museum kind of experience literally from the comfort of your house as well. So within this situation that we have, this is like the perfect condition for people to examine objects. So let me just begin then. My name is Gurinder Mann. I'm a Sikh historian and director of the Sikh Museum initiative. We're an initiative been running around working tirelessly to kind of engage and develop and digitize 3D objects essentially. And I'm joined today with Taran Singh, who I'll introduce you to shortly. And Taran is like a 3D developer who has been actually working very hard in terms of actually creating the objects in 3D as well. So I'm just going to take you through to the next slide, basically, just to kind of, I need to just share my screen with you guys first. So what I'll do is, if you can all see that, and then what I'm going to do is just move on to the kind of like the setup of what we're going to be talking about. I'm going to talk about the Sikh Museum initiative itself. I'm going to talk about and go to give you a walkthrough of some of the objects that we have in our 3D museum, so to speak. And there's going to be a demonstration of objects in terms of what virtual reality is as well. And there'll be a chance to ask questions. And Taran just kind of mentioned as well, if you do want to ask a question,
interested in seeing the Koh-i-Noor diamond, they're doing stuff.
Facility at the bottom of your screens as well, where you can actually kind of just send a message to Taran, and he'll be able to actually kind of generate these questions, and we can have a look through some of the kind of queries you may have. So essentially, the whole idea behind the Sikh Museum initiative is to actually create a digital platform for Sikh exhibits, essentially. So some kind of repository of where we can actually hold items together, even if these objects are kind of scattered all over the world, essentially. And we give a lot of lectures on shared Sikh and British history as well. And I think the main idea of what we're trying to do is to actually source relics and artifacts in public as well as private institutions. Because what we do know is that there is so many objects within like the Sikh diaspora. We know there's lots of objects in museums as well, but a lot of private collectors have objects. And this is an area that we've been kind of tapping in with as well, to actually say, well, if you're a private collector and you have objects within your kind of personal collection, it's like a win-win situation if we're allowed to kind of digitize it and possibly even keep individuals' anonymity as well. And we're also looking at kind of linking and preserving places and artifacts as well from an Anglo-Sikh perspective as well. So why Sikh history and why Sikh heritage? Essentially, I'm a Sikh historian who's been working on these areas for about nearly come upon 20 years now. And what we've found is that essentially that there is a lot of objects which have been related to the Sikh gurus. There's been a lot of items which have been kind of split from their actual owners. And we also understand that through various wars, neglect and lack of understanding, Sikh heritage doesn't seem to have actually got the kind of spotlight, should we say, or even the expertise needed to actually kind of preserve it to the levels it should be, maybe of say other faiths, for instance. So we do know that in the early 1800s, there was a kind of renaissance to actually kind of bring all Sikh items together. And through the Anglo Sikh wars, what we actually found was that after the annexation of the Punjab, for instance, the British East India Company actually took a lot of the, what we call the Toshakhana or treasury of the Sikhs, and brought much of it here to the UK. And that's why you do see a lot of items here in the UK scattered amongst many, many museums as well. So that seems to be the premises of what we're trying to do in terms of preserve the Sikh history, so to speak. In terms of ourselves and what we've done various lectures and events related to the Sikh Empire, the Anglo-Sikh Wars, the suffragette movement, for instance, which was very big in the last couple of years, especially in terms of the commemorations. We've been working with people like Rav Singh for walking tours here in London. We've done art exhibitions. But I think the biggie for us was the actual Anglo Sikh Wars Battles, Treaties and Relics exhibition, which we undertook between 2016 and 2017, because this was the first time where we could actually kind of showcase different type of technologies, essentially. So whilst normal exhibitions of what we call 2D, you go to a museum, you go to an exhibition, you'd see objects, and you'll also be able to see like objects and exhibition boards. What we wanted to do was to actually kind of bring the exhibition to life through various kind of technologies, including augmented reality, 3D modeling, and 3D printing as well. So what we're going to do is just to show you a little video actually, which just shows you a little bit more about what we were trying to do. So I'm just going to load up a video for you guys, and so you can actually just see what that exhibition was about.
To reach into a museum cabinet and take the items out. Well, at this exhibition in Leicester, augmented reality allows you to do just that.
Now, a new interactive exhibition in Leicester is bringing an undertold era of British and Sikh history to life.
Yes, the Sikh Museum is using modern technology to showcase unseen relics from the Sikh Wars of the 19th century, which were sparked by conflicts between the Sikh Empire and the East India Company. Elise Chamberlain reports.
The Anglo Sikh Wars were fiercely fought between the Sikh Empire and the East India Company. Through a number of battles, they led to the annexation of the Punjab in 1849. This exhibition at Newark House's museum is bringing the history of them, as well as relics and artifacts that have never been displayed before, to life.
You have Sikh scriptures, weapons, swords, maps, from the actual battlefield, and how the empires, the Sikh Empire, which was also expanding up towards Afghanistan and Tibet, clashed with the British Empire, and how the empire was, the great empire was lost.
On this tablet, visitors can take a 360-degree look at some of the equipment used, and even the Koh-i-Noor diamond, which was given up to the British following the 19th century wars. Gamers may recognise this prized jewel from the Assassin's Creed franchise. As well as 3D technology, this exhibition also features augmented reality. So if you have a look at one of these tiles, they feature information on weaponry and some of the armour that would have been used in the wars. And if I turn around, you can see exactly what they would have looked like.
It's definitely more fun, and that's what we want to actually see as part of this exhibition. Whilst it is a serious subject, we still want to actually get younger audiences engaged with it, so they can actually learn more about their history in this new modern way.
Items have come from museums across the country to feature in this lottery-funded exhibition, which opens tomorrow. It's hoped it'll prevent this era of British and Sikh history being forgotten. Elise Chamberlain, BBC East Midlands Today in Leicester.
Okay, so that kind of gave you a flavour in terms of what we were trying to do with the 3D technology.
Welcome back to the big debate here on the Asia Network with me, Nomia Iqbal. Now, I'm going to ask you a question. How much do you know about the Anglo Sikh Wars?
Gurinder, you want to turn the video off?
And I want to know, do you know, if you do know about them, how much of an influence these wars had on Indian history? Well, my next two guests are part of it.
Yeah, okay. So essentially the exhibition was able to actually achieve various kind of outputs, so to speak. That was all related to the number of visitors we had as well. But I think the actual technology that we used was actually very, very kind of experimental, I would use the word. And it did manage to actually have a great level of engagement with visitors as well. So I think that's where we first tested it out and were able to kind of test out what we thought was what worked well and what didn't work well in terms of actually employing technologies in a museum environment, essentially. So moving on from that, we initiated what we call the Anglo Sikh Virtual Museum, which was now our prominent kind of project that we have running at the moment. And that is essentially to just give me a second. Yeah, that is to actually look at recreating objects in 3D from various museums and private collections as well. And the idea is that if we can actually create an object in 3D, we can actually see the actual artifact from you know, different angles, for instance. We can see it in a way that you won't be able to see from in a traditional museum. And also the idea here is that it's all from the comfort of your own house as well. So whilst the traditional museum is you're going out and actually going and visiting these places, you can actually see the museum from the comfort of your own home. And like with situations like we're living in today at the moment, you know, this is a perfect way for people to actually do some learning online essentially as well. So that's the kind of prerequisite here, I think, in terms of what we're talking about. And we've worked with a lot of kind of institutions here across the UK, including the V&A, Ancient House Museum in Thetford. Also worked with universities as well, including the University of Leicester. We've been working with the Royal Armouries. We've been working with the Royal Collection Trust, which is the Queen's Collection as well. And we've had major exposure as well in terms of our projects, including the BBC, ITV, and various other channels and newspapers across the world as well, specifically India. So what is the actual Anglo Sikh Virtual Museum about? Like I said, it's all about actually trying to bring to life 20 objects is what we're trying to say. It's a Heritage Lottery funded project to actually kind of do research on objects which are scattered all across the UK, but then to actually have a pattern of recreating these objects once we've actually had some kind of liaison with museums, but also private collectors as well. So what we've been doing since 2018 was actually undertaking digital showcases all across the UK, where the objects that we've recreated in 3D can be shown on what we call digital monitors in a sense. So people can actually zoom in on the objects, can view them, and actually kind of have interaction with them. And in the last, I think 6 to 8 months as well, we've actually been also using the virtual reality headsets, which will actually kind of give you a demo of very shortly as well. So that's the premise behind the actual virtual museum itself. So the website has been live since last year, and there's lots of objects there in terms of what we've digitized so far. So what we've been doing is we've been actually adding objects on in a timely basis, and I'm just going to run through a couple of objects for you just now as well. Firstly, here's the actual website as well, anglosikhmuseum.com. So all our repository of digitized objects are actually on this website. You need to just click on the relics tab, and then what that does, it actually takes you into the site where you can actually view a number of objects. Now, before I talk about the Koh-i-Noor, which we're releasing for the first time on our website, there is, like I said, 2 pages worth of digitized objects. And I'm going to start off with the Sikh coin, actually. So I'm just going to click on this for you. So just to actually show you how it works is that once the object we've actually recreated in 3D can now actually be put onto the website itself. And with that in mind, once you've clicked on the object, you can actually then see the object from different vantage points. You can actually see the coin, you know, from top, the bottom, to the side, etc. So this particular coin is from the Sikh Empire period, the early 1800s, and it depicts Maharaja Ranjit Singh of the Sikh Empire offering a flower to the first founder of the Sikh faith, Guru Nanak, and we have like a Sikh flag in the middle as well. And the interesting thing about it is it's a very rare coin, so this was one of the reasons why we wanted to actually choose this as one of the objects that we wanted to kind of digitize and also actually present on our 3D museum as well. I think the key thing to bear in mind is that we are trying to have a different array of objects as well, because especially for the Sikhs, the military theme is very, very prominent, but we wanted to actually make sure that there's a wide range of items that people can interact with. Hence why some of the first objects we kind of digitized for the platform was related to jewelry, for instance. So what we have here is a dika, or a kind of what we say a head bearing basically, which belonged to Sophia Dalip Singh, who was a prominent suffragette. But to put in context, Sophia Dalip Singh was the daughter of Maharaja Dalip Singh, who was the son of Maharaja Ranjit Singh. So this actually was handed down from the Sikh Empire generation to generation and wound up in a private collection. So we were actually given the chance by a private collector to actually view the object and then recreate it as well. But if you look at it, again, it's an object which we can take from beginning to end, digitize it, but then actually make it available for everyone to see as well. And the detail, the work which Taran's done, which he'll talk about in a short while, is that it's actually exquisite. So it's not just actually moving it around, you can actually kind of zoom in as well, and then actually see the elaborate detail which these objects have been kind of undertaken to as well. So like I said, another example of an object that we've kind of digitized essentially. Okay, so I'll choose another one as well. Like I said, these are all available now, so you can view these in their entirety, essentially. So I'm gonna just talk about what we call the Jarena, okay? So the Jarena is a Persian word which actually means 4 mirrors, essentially. And this breastplate, in essence, is related to the 10th Guru of the Sikhs, Guru Gobind Singh. And this was one of our first objects, which was actually modeled, essentially. And it was kind of showcased in, well, across the overseas, actually, in America, actually. So this breastplate was first showcased in 2016 and is related to Guru Gobind Singh, like I said. And it's got the sacred verses of the Sikh scriptures inscribed on this breastplate as well. And again, like I said, the detail is absolutely fantastic in terms of actually, you know, going down right down to the wire in terms of what you can actually see. So you can actually see these sacred verses which are inscribed on here, the actual Koftgari and the actual detail and the buckles as well. And this actual object was actually just recreated from photographs itself. So when we are talking about objects and the way we actually digitize and the way we create the objects, this object was never been able, well, we were unable to actually have access to it. And this is one of the reasons why we wanted to create an online museum, is that we can actually create objects which we either don't have access to, or we can actually recreate if they've been lost, so to speak, as well. So that was like a first object, but still kind of garners quite a lot of kind of accolades and also a lot of interest, basically, when it comes to all the different type of objects we've kind of actually digitized. Okay, so we're now going to come to a biggie, which is the Koh-i-Noor diamond, which is a very, very famous diamond, which, you know, does create a lot of ripples in terms of ownership, in terms of who should actually own the Koh-i-Noor diamond. Now, essentially, in a nutshell, this is not the Koh-i-Noor diamond that you see presently in the Tower of London, but the way we looked at it was to actually kind of recreate and reclaim essentially our Sikh heritage by actually digitizing the Koh-i-Noor diamond as it is, or as it looked like prior to it being cut, and at the time of the Sikh Empire of Maharaja Ranjit Singh as well. So what you find here is that we've got like what we call an armlet, and you've got the 2 diamonds, you've got the 3rd diamond as well here. So this is what the Koh-i-Noor diamond would have looked like circa 1851, and essentially it was to be actually worn around the arm, essentially. So whereas it is now in the Queen's mother's actual kind of tiara, in terms of a single diamond, this was originally used to actually be worn around the arm, like I said, by Maharaja Ranjit Singh, and also it was worn by his son, Maharaja Sher Singh as well. So we do have depictions of that as well. So this is now live as well. Whilst this was actually kind of done some years ago in 2016, and was available to be seen on digital showcases that we did across the UK, this is now being released today for the first time, so that you can actually kind of interact with it in the own comfort of your own homes as well. So that's the Koh-i-Noor diamond, which, you know, I'm sure many people will have a lot of interest in as well. Okay, so I'm going to move on next to online virtual reality demonstration. So to look at each object, what we can do with each object is there's a different way of actually kind of sharing this object. So whilst I've just shown you the online version, we've been showcasing the objects in terms of the digital platforms that we have when we go out to see the public. But now what I'm going to do is I'm just going to kind of hand you over to Taran, basically, who's going to actually kind of just give you the virtual reality demonstration, essentially. So I'm going to hand it over to Taran now, and he's going to go through the objects and what they would look like if you were actually wearing a virtual reality headset, essentially. So over to you, Taran, and an introduction for yourself as well, really.
Yeah, okay, great, yeah. Do you want to unshare your screen, and I'll share my screen, yeah?
Right, okay, yeah. Let's, I think I've unshared it. Do you want to just...
Okay, if I do that. Can everyone see my screen now, yeah? Okay, great. So yeah, my name's Taran. Obviously, I run my own interactive 3D design company, working alongside Gurinder for quite a few years in the heritage field. I've been working in 3D as a 3D artist and a 3D CAD specialist for the last 15 years, mainly in the architecture and engineering industry. And I was specializing in the research and development of VR for engineering architecture design. Okay, this is some of the work that we used to do, a lot of interior design, building work. We also did a lot of work on kind of like objects as well. I was very interested in creating objects or modeling objects. I'm also an avid sculptor as well, so that really helps when you're 3D modeling, being able to create objects from kind of just visually seeing them. So obviously the Koh-i-Noor, we didn't have the original version of this, and so we were able to recreate it from drawings and photographs. And a lot of the objects that we've created using traditional 3D modeling techniques, 3D CAD techniques, using physically based shaders. This is just a quick little video I wanted to show everyone, because everyone's kind of has this question of how are we modeling up these objects. So a lot of it is based on reference. This is one of the ways we create it. So when we don't have access to the object, we actually manually kind of sculpt and model the geometry manually ourselves. And we've become really good at this, you know, recreating any sort of shape and model. And while it's not like 100% accurate, it's not like a 3D scan, it actually gives a really good representation of an object. And especially if it doesn't exist or you can't get access to the physical object, this is probably the next best way. So you can see we can get some really kind of advanced detail in these type of models. And you'll see as I go through, we create this sword, creating all the little shapes. So that's kind of like an interesting way of seeing how we produce these, you know, these quite accurate models. Okay, the other way that we're using to kind of digitize these objects very quickly is this is when we went to the Victoria and Albert Museum, myself and Gurinder, and we were able to take some photographs of the object, and we're using photogrammetry techniques to kind of recreate 3D models from photographs. And while it can be good, there's a lot of processing involved, and we've been able to really kind of work out ways in creating very, very optimized models for virtual reality. Obviously, the engagement, as Gurinder said, has been brilliant as well. I mean, going around schools, galleries, you know, everywhere basically, trying to show people. And a lot of the people that we've actually come across doing these VR demonstrations, and I think, Gurinder, was it like 10,000 VR kind of interactions that we've had here over the last 2 years?
Yeah, I think it's been a bit more than that now, actually.
Yeah, so it's a bit more than that. So we've been doing these regular events, and a lot of the people that we're kind of coming across have never used a VR headset. So their reactions and their kind of feedback have really kind of changed the way that we developed our kind of VR project that you're going to see. So again, some 3D models. Another thing that we're developing is some augmented reality applications, so you're able to see the objects through a mobile phone. And so that transition from where we had it on the screen before, we've had to really heavily find ways of optimizing the model so that you can work on mobile technology and VR technology. And we've kind of like got a lot of experience with that sort of stuff now. So what I'm going to do, obviously with the 3D printing, as Gurinder said as well, we've been able to kind of go to a museum, take a couple of photographs, recreate the model, and have some 3D prints within like within a few hours. We can do that. So, you know, it's just a lot of research and development has gone on in the background while we've been doing this project. So it's really helped. So what I'm going to do now is I'm going to go through the VR set. So what we're using is I'm using a Quest headset. Now, 50% of the headsets that were sold within the last year have been like Quest headsets have been really popular because it's untethered and works, really well, very, very accessible. So I'm going to put this on, and as here you can see, this is the actual development environment for our VR application. I'm going to press play now, and I'm going to pick a few objects, and then Gurinder is going to explain the different objects for you. Okay, so I'm going to press play now. I'm going to put the VR headset on, and I'm going to grab my controller.
Okay, so what Taran's doing now is it's what you see literally in front of you is exactly what he's seeing now. So what we've done is we created like a kind of fictitious kind of background at the moment where we can actually show a number of objects literally in virtual reality. So if you have the headset on, you can come across these objects and you can actually interact with them as well. So another feature of the kind of things we're doing at the moment. So Taran, can I ask you possibly just to, if we can just show the Sikh standard at the moment, that'd be great. If you can just have a look at it. So one of our objects that we wanted to kind of show was like the Sikh flag from the Sikh Empire essentially. And what we can see is that the interactivity here is that the flag is actually, interacting with us if the wind was there, for instance. So there's that interactivity available to actually see. So we thought that was kind of pretty interesting in terms of how we interact with objects. And have you picked that up, Taran, just to kind of confirm?
I've got it in my hand now, so I'm able to kind of swing it around. And kids especially, they love doing this because they're able to swing it around and play around with it.
Which is actually great because the whole idea here is that the level of interactivity has to be to a level where we can engage audiences essentially. So once you've put that down in a safe place, if I can get you to maybe look at the jewelry. So we looked at the tikka earlier on. If I can get you to just pick that up as well. So again, so you can actually see it in a different environment essentially. So the idea being that once you've picked it up, you can actually, it looks like if you've got it in your hand, so a different kind of facet or a different way of interactivity compared with like the online version, which we kind of just showed you a few minutes ago. So that's another object that we've recreated. Again, this is related to the Sikh Empire as well. That's what we call a galgi, and it's to be worn on the front of the turban, essentially. So again, it's a very, very exquisite piece essentially, and again that was given to us to digitize from a private collection. So we can move on to the Kanda pistol. Now this is a very, very interesting object. So the Kanda is traditionally a sword which is resonates with the Sikhs, but this particular object in essence also has a pistol attached to it as well. So it is what we call a Kanda pistol. So it has got two kind of facets to it. The key thing is this is actually ceremonial and is not to be actually used in battle. It was actually belonged to the Maharaja Patiala, and it actually came down into an exhibition in Paris. And then the museum here in England, the Nottingham Museum Service, actually purchased it from this exhibition in Paris. And then it was actually kept in Nottingham for many, many years. So we actually went and approached the museum, and we actually did a lot of research, we did a lot of digitization work, and this is one of the objects which we were able to recreate in 3D and bring to life essentially. The Nottingham Museum is actually shut at the moment, but they reopened in 2021, and they will actually be having this sword on kind of display for the first time as well. So the whole idea in terms of how we work is, whilst people say, well, is digital technologies getting rid of museums, we look at it in a different way. We look at it in terms of we're actually complementing the museum experience as well. So it just shows you how we can dig out objects from the museum kind of back offices, so to speak, and then bring to life, and then they coming back and actually bringing the main object on display. Here we have what we call a talwar, which is actually again from the Sikh Empire period, and we actually digitized this for the 550th commemorations of Guru Nanak, essentially. Obviously, this features a cartouche panel of Guru Nanak, which is an extended feature of various deities within this particular sword. So this was actually recreated at that particular time in November, at that time, essentially. Okay, so if we have a turn around to the actual cannon as well, Taran, so if we can have a look at that. So we actually kind of digitized a cannon as well. So, you know, this actually used a lot more work in terms of like photography as opposed to actual digitization. But the whole idea here is that obviously within the confines, now what Taran's doing is actually walking around his living room, but he can actually go close to it and actually kind of see the way, go really close up to the cannon as well. And I think that gives us that highly detailed kind of experience, essentially, when it comes down to actually viewing and kind of interacting with objects as well. So, like I said, this is a number of objects that we've kind of digitized, essentially, in terms of how we're kind of bringing this project to fruition. And again, look, we've got this coin here as well. Now, just the interesting thing about this coin is, Taran, if you can just put the coin back to where it was. Now, if you notice that there's two versions of the coin here, and that's just to kind of give you kind of a sense of kind of depth, but also to give you a sense of the actual kind of the height and actual, the sizing of the coin as well. So, what we want to do was, can you actually pick up the second coin as well, Taran?
No, I can't at the moment, but we can enable that after.
That's fair enough. Okay, so yeah, so it just kind of gives you the kind of sense of proportion essentially for these particular objects as well. And this was like a shield of what another early object that we recreated in 3D. So it's just a hide shield. These kind of shields would have been used by the Sikhs in battle as well. And again, it just kind of shows you the different array of objects which we can view in virtual reality. Now, the interesting thing about these objects is that when we've actually taken out the virtual reality headsets out on the road, it's actually kind of had so much engagement that, sometimes very hard to prize people off actually using it. Now, we think of it normally as being something which is maybe just for children, essentially, but I think it's a lot more than that. I think it's more about how we bring heritage alive, how we can actually interact with these objects, but also provide history as well. Because as a historian, for me, it was all about how do we actually bring the Sikh history to come alive. And working with Taran, for instance, using the technology side, is there's this kind of dual, so to speak, kind of way of actually merging stories and history through technology and bring them alive as well, essentially. So it's really, really important that we do use the technologies that we have at our disposal in order to actually kind of, bring these kind of objects to life. So, Taran, was there anything additional you wanted just to say about the 3D technologies that we've used at the moment? You're on mute.
Yeah, sorry. Yeah, I think that what we've seen from our engagements is that we're seeing a lot of kind of families and families with young people engaging with the technology a lot more, and we're getting a lot of people who haven't used the technology before, but we're able to kind of say to them, look, have a go, and we've actually found that they actually prefer a more simpler, shorter experience rather than something that's really complicated. So I know that sometimes developers can get kind of a bit overexcited and overdevelop the application, and a lot of the stuff that we put into there, like the controls for scale and things like that, being able to pick up objects and have additional information in there, was actually confusing people. So what they wanted was something that they could come into very quickly and easily, have a quick look around for about 3 to 5 minutes, and then they could take the headset off, because a lot of people, they don't feel very comfortable with the headset on. They feel disconnected from their environment. And it's a good way just to say, oh, just have a quick look around. And there's a reason why we put all the objects around the person. So they don't have to walk anywhere. They don't have to do any complicated movement or kind of navigation. They can just look at all the objects, walk up to them from a circular kind of point of view. And if they want to pick up the objects, they can pick up the objects as well. And a lot of the time we found that we don't give the controllers to the person as well. We just give them the headset. People who are just new to the technology, and just with the headset, because they just put it on, they're not confused by any controllers. They can just have a nice look around and concentrate on the objects. So we put the objects right at the center of their vision, so they know exactly what they're meant to be looking at. They can walk up to them, and different people will attract to different objects. And we are going to be putting some extra information in there, but we're trying to work out a way of making it so that it's it doesn't get in the way of their experience. So, and the other thing is you're trying to cater for people who, cater for people who are wanting different things. Most people are just casual browsers, and they just want like a casual experience, or it's a bit of a novelty. Let's have a look at some of these objects that don't exist anymore. But then some people, they want additional information. And so for those people who want to dig a little bit deeper, we can actually add extra information into there, like extra videos, extra images. And we've even added audio commentary as well. So the augmented reality application, Gurinder's been recording the audio. And so when you're looking at the object, you actually get the audio. So when you pick up the object, you actually get the audio description of the object. So you don't have to kind of read it or click on anything. It's kind of quite seamless.
Okay, yeah, that's fantastic, actually. So thanks for that, Taran. What we'll do now is, I think it might be worth actually picking up on some of the questions we've received as well. Taran, there's a couple of ones, if you want to take up. I think the first one was about Nina Salomons was asking about, was this volumetric?
Okay, yeah, no, it's not volumetric. It's mainly kind of polygonal models. And these are created in like 3ds Max mainly, and we texture them using Substance Painter. But what it is, with the polygon counts, we're able to do level of detail. So we'll have a very detailed object, and then a mid-level detailed, and a low level. And then what we can do is we can actually kind of choose. We've actually created a really good pipeline. By the way, everyone, you can unmute yourself as well. So Nina, if you want to unmute yourself or ask anything further, feel free to do so. But what we did is we came up with a really good pipeline, being able to create a really high resolution object, which we can 3D print. But then from that high resolution object, we can generate 3 or 4 different detail levels, which we can use then for a desktop application, and it means a mobile application, and then a VR application. And what it means is we get the best quality that we can on that device. So obviously the stuff you've got on the web doesn't look as good as the stuff that runs on our desktop touchscreen application. But we've found a way of really kind of streamlining that process of not kind of having to redo work, like make a high resolution model, then make another couple of models every time. So we knew it from the beginning that even when we started in the beginning, we knew that we're gonna want to go to touchscreens, mobiles, the web, and VR. So we kind of started as we meant to go along, as in we kind of put those processes in place right at the beginning. So we knew our pipeline, we have to preserve a high resolution model, get it as good as we can, and then generate all the different ones that we need from there. And we do the same with our textures as well. So we use physically based textures which respond to the environment. And what it means is that if, let's say, somebody wants to change the environment, the objects will kind of react to that sort of lighting. And we're using real material values, the real values of gold, real values of reflective values of different materials and objects. We've done quite a bit of research into that. So yeah, so they weren't volumetric, but we're, maybe something that we can look at further.
Taran, is it possible to unmute everybody yourself?
Yeah. Basically, I've set it so that anyone can allow. So yeah, anyone can unmute themselves now. So sorry, feel free to unmute yourself if there's anything else. Nina, if you want to come in on that one.
Yeah, sorry. Hi, thanks so much for the presentation. Really enjoying it. I work a lot in this technology, so I guess I have a lot of questions.
Yeah.
One of them was the cross-platform abilities of it. Was it a priority to have individuals in the museum see the environment around them? So I'm guessing, are you prioritizing AR over VR? And then additionally with the website, because you can interact with the objects, are you replicating what's available in VR, or are you kind of making it more of a, you can look at the object, you can find out more information about it on a website?
Yeah, I think our main kind of focus was on kind of accessibility. So we know that people are a lot of people out there haven't got VR headsets, and they haven't got touch screens. And so what we try to do is try to think, what are most people able to access? So when we were in the exhibition, obviously the big touchscreen worked brilliantly. Everyone was just drawn to it. Young people were drawn to it. For us, really, the environment is not so important, because we're mainly trying to concentrate on the objects, and I think what we're trying to do is just give people different options of viewing the object, so they can, if they want to view it in AR, they can view it in AR. And what we found is it's kind of like an age thing as well. A lot of the younger people, they love the AR because they're able to kind of see the jewelry and wear it and kind of take photographs of themselves. So we're trying to think of different ways of like engaging those people. How can we get these collections out there? How can we get these young people interested in these collections? And we found with the younger people, they like taking photographs of themselves with the jewelry and sharing them on social media. And because when we initially tested the augmented reality with them, they would stand kind of, you know, they would have the object in space, but then they would stand next to it and see what it would look like if they were wearing it. So we're looking at kind of head tracking and, you know, being able to, you know, give people different options. And the thing is, it's not too much work for us. It's not too much work for us to go from desktop to AR and VR, because we've already taken that into consideration. So our 3D model is already generated. The only thing that we do is we just generate the correct textures for the correct environment. Yeah.
One more. Do you guys also use holograms or haptics like Leap Motion for any of your experiences?
No, we haven't used any of those at the moment. No.
But I think just going back to you, Nina, it's the idea, I think, for us is that multifaceted, essentially. So whilst there's one kind of experience with what we're trying to do, we're trying to hit different kind of people with the same object, essentially. So not literally physically to hit them, but to actually kind of have that experience for different people in different ways, essentially. So, you know, so we do have the digital touchscreens, which have worked really well. We have now, we've kind of actually extended it onto the website, for instance, so that people can engage with it. So I think what we're finding is that a different kind of audience is kind of emerging from the way we actually have our different platforms as well. So touchscreens, virtual reality, and the website is giving us a different kind of audience, which for us is great, essentially.
Yeah,
engagement.
Yeah, I've also found as well that with the touchscreens, it's more of a shared experience. So, you know, families kind of gather around and they'll touch different objects and choose the objects that they want to look at. And I think with the VR, people are still a bit apprehensive putting it on. So people do need a bit of coaxing, or the parents will come along. They'll want the kids to have a go because it keeps the kids busy for a little bit. But then we'll ask the parents to have a go as well. You have a go as well. And then the kids will be asking them questions. And when the kids are wearing it, we start asking them questions, or what can you see? How high is the wheel of the, you know, and this type of interaction, I find it makes the VR experience more engaging when there's somebody there talking to you about it or asking you questions about it. Whereas if you just put the headset on and they don't know what's going on, they don't really get it, it can be a bit confusing.
I've got a couple of other questions here as well. I've got Sean here from I think this is Sean from Canada, I think it is. Sean, if you do want to ask a follow-up question, I mean, what Sean is actually saying is wondering, and she's curious about, has this implemented? Hi there, Sean.
Hi, yeah, it's me from Canada.
Hi, nice to hear from you. I think what you're trying to ask is about whether if this has been implemented into any kind of school curriculums, essentially. And I think the fast and easy answer to that is the question is no. Whilst we have been working with schools and we have been actually taking this out into schools, and there has been a lot of engagement in terms of schools, but it's not forming as a part of any curriculum, and will take a bit of work here for us if we were to actually get that into some kind of curriculum. Can I ask why you asked the question? Is it something that you're looking at in your neck of the woods, essentially?
Well, Michael and I were having a private conversation saying it'd be great for us to bring this to our university educations, but I'm thinking more of my children who were sitting with me during your presentation and watching this, and they were just fascinated by the whole presentation. And in Canada in particular, we're redesigning, or BC, British Columbia, we've redesigned our whole curriculum to make it more innovative, creative, more flexible. And so this is one of the ways that I see that bringing history to life for like a kindergarten to grade 7 education would be phenomenal, to embed this sort of learning into like a social studies curriculum.
No, absolutely. I think for us, we've been kind of like, it's been different stages for us in terms of what we want to do with the technology. I've got to say, some of it has been very experimental in terms of what we're doing and how we're presenting it. Whilst originally it is intended to be more of a kind of a museum type experience, but I think this is a lot bigger than that. And hence the question that you're asking is actually spot on, is what do we do with something like this next? Now, in terms of yourselves in Canada, we're more than happy to actually have some conversations, maybe have some further chats to see if what the possibilities could be in terms of actually employing this in, you know, because we don't want this just to be like a UK thing. We know we're getting a lot of interest from all around the world in terms of what we're doing. So if that's something that we can kind of help with, especially within, you know, like an educational field, etc., then, you know, they definitely get in touch with us, Sean, and Michael as well. And we're more than helpful to actually kind of pursue this further, really. Is there, do you want to follow up on that at all, Sean?
No, great. I think we will definitely be following up with you. You sent an email out, so I think we'll be connecting with you by email, and let's see where we can kind of broaden the scope and exposure of the work that you're doing.
No, absolutely fantastic. No, great to hear from you as well. So shall we open you up a bit more, Taran?
Yeah. 1 second, I just wanted to cover one thing here. I'm just going to share my screen here because I know Nina asked about the HoloLens. We did actually do a test, and I'm going to just play that for Nina now. So we did get access to HoloLens for a little bit. They're very expensive. It's Microsoft's new kind of AR glasses. And this is actually the Jarena that we made. That I actually tested on the HoloLens when we got a couple of weeks with it just to develop on it. And so we were able to, and this is, I think it's going to be amazing when these kind of augmented reality glasses come off, you know, when they're a bit more accessible. I mean, these are quite expensive at the moment. But yeah, but it's amazing. Imagine having the object in front of you, being able to walk around it, you know, and we can do this with a mobile phone now with our application at the moment. But I mean, having it with the glasses is totally amazing. So this was quite a while ago. Remember, we tested this and we took it to a few demos. So that was pretty cool. So I just wanted to share that because I know she asked about the HoloLens.
No, fantastic. Essentially, I've gotten a question from Bill Brookman. He's asking, is there an ethical issue about authenticity when some objects are actually photographed, but others are created brilliantly from photos, which must include interpretation? Bill, are you okay to just kind of clarify exactly what you're asking here?
Yes, full of admiration, full of admiration. But Taran, if you interpret from photographs, in truth, you will be making an interpretation and have some decisions. And I'm wondering if this thing grows, that there has to be some way, perhaps an international standard, whereby something has been created by looking at it, but the viewer then knows this has been created by interpreting.
Yeah, no, I 100% agree with you. And we're very honest with people that, you know, a lot of the objects that we've created, I mean, even the objects that are 3D scanned and that are photogrammetried, I mean, they're not kind of accurate representations either. I mean, there was a project about a few years ago, which was done at the Birmingham Science Museum, where they had the ichthyosaur fossils. And those were like scanned using kind of like very deep 3D scanning. So those were like 100% accurate, very high resolution. And I think the problem that we've got is that the technology can't handle those large resolutions. So you have to interpret, you're going to have to choose where are we going to put the detail. And yeah, no, we're going to have to be very honest with people that, you know, this is not 100% accurate. And especially with like the Jarena, and a lot of people have loved looking at it. And I mean, you know, we are very, when people do ask us about it, we do say, yeah, look, it was generated from photographs. We did it as an experiment to see what kind of quality could we get to, you know. And then there's the other thing about are the materials exactly accurate? I mean, we could look at it under certain lighting conditions and say, yeah, I mean, that's roughly what the material is. And then we reference kind of real world materials. What is the reflectivity and the IOR value of gold, of silver, of these types of materials? But it's never going to be 100% accurate. But I don't think that you can, at the moment, create 100% accurate 3D digital model of an object. I mean, because it's polygon based, there's going to be some interpretation as to where the detail, the polygons are going to go. But yeah, no, I think that that is going to be an issue. And I'm kind of a bit uncomfortable with it as well. Yeah, it's something that I think about a lot. I'm trying to be as authentic as I can, but at the same time, I think we need to have disclaimers there that which say that, you know, these objects may not be 100% accurate. You know, they do go through artistic interpretation of the person who's doing the 3D modeling and the texturing.
I think, could I just add, there's always the question of with physical material replicas, you're not necessarily getting 100% accuracy with something like a, you know, a Roman shard, part of a pot from ancient times. If it's a recreation, it's not going to be with the same acute detail. So I think that's something to bear in mind when you go forward with thinking about how to, you know, present your disclaimer or whatever.
Yeah, no, definitely. And I think it's more about accessibility. We've got to make objects that, you know, are hidden, stolen, you know, unavailable. You know, it's the next best thing from having it there, I think. And I mean, when we did our initial tests at the beginning, the experimentation, and seeing people's reaction when they saw the objects, which kind of hold a lot of kind of cultural value to a lot of Sikhs, and seeing their reaction and seeing their kind of enthusiasm for the technology kind of really kind of spurred us on to kind of continue with it.
I think it's absolutely brilliant.
Yeah, brilliant.
Yeah. Thanks for the question.
Thank you very much. Michael's kind of messaged me as well. It's a really great question. He's asking about what can we do in terms of 3D. I think what you're saying, Michael, is in terms of buildings and locations as well as objects. So it's really interesting you've asked the question, Michael, is that before we actually started looking at objects, we were actually looking at locations and buildings first. Now, let's just put this into context as well before I come on to you, Michael, is that the thing about Sikh heritage is that whilst predominantly people think of Sikhs being in, say, northern India, obviously the Sikh Empire was actually across India and Pakistan as well. So essentially, with the partition of India and Pakistan, much of Sikh heritage was actually kind of lost or is kind of hidden in Pakistan, and sometimes there's been a lot of access issues, say, in Pakistan. Whilst we're looking at objects here in the UK, but I think at some point we're going to have to get to a point where we want to actually start actually recreating buildings. Now, one of the reasons why me and Taran actually went down this path was that we did actually see the kind of horrible things that were happening in Palmyra, for instance, you know, the destruction of buildings, when ISIS was blowing up buildings, for instance. And so at that time, this is when we were just starting off in terms of what we wanted to do. And, you know, we could have gone down that building kind of route, or so to speak, as well. But I'll let you to actually kind of define exactly what you're asking, essentially.
I'm thinking in terms of recreating diasporic history. Sharon can also speak to this as well. We're very much interested in sort of reconstructing in some way the story of the Sikh diaspora in lower mainland British Columbia, but my work also in Alberta. And I'm thinking it might add sort of that textual mapping dimension to the stuff that you're doing, if you're able to use some of this technology to be able to mark out how settlement occurred, what it would have been like, where people lived, that sort of thing.
Again, you're thinking on the right lines in terms of something we've already done and what we're looking to do as well. I think two aspects to that. Firstly, Taran, if you remember correctly, you actually did a bit of 3D mapping for the Saraguri documentary, didn't you?
Yeah, that's right, yeah.
In terms of actually mapping out the locations of where the Battle of Saraguri took place, for instance. So that was one step in terms of mapping technology. And secondly, we were also kind of thinking of maybe recreating digitally, maybe some of the battles from the Anglo Sikh Wars as well, for instance. So I think you're talking about those kind of lines. So just to put in perspective as well, we actually have the actual original maps that Lord Gough actually used in the battles of these Anglo Sikh Wars. So we could even actually have those kind of maps and then recreate the army positions in a kind of dynamic way as well. Again, a lot of food for thought, and definitely an area we will look to progress in down the line, essentially. And again, if there's some ideas you're thinking about, Michael, definitely it's an area that we would like to kind of progress in terms of having some dialogue with yourself as well.
Thanks, Gurinder.
Okay.
Ask Gurinder, do you have any other Canadian partners or other partnerships beyond the UK?
No, we don't at the moment. What we do have is we've had a lot of interest from India, for instance. So we do have a lot of expertise when it comes to actually kind of working with us in terms of the objects, for instance, in terms of the coinage that we just kind of recreated. We had a lot of expert people who work in the coin field, for instance, kind of actually working with, but if specifically from Canada at this moment in time, no. So you could be the first.
Okay.
Okay.
Great.
So Taran, shall we let other people ask a few questions now? So
yeah.
if you've got a question, please let us know.
Yeah, on the bottom left-hand side, there's a little mute. You can unmute yourself and start your video if anyone wants to ask any more questions.
Yeah, I think Pardeep's asking whether we can watch the stream later on. Yeah, I think we'll be able to share this with you later on. It's being recorded anyway, and it's live on Facebook as well. So we're happy to actually share this on our Sikh Museum account afterwards as well. So yeah, it will be available. Is there any other further questions anyone's got in terms of the technology, how we're using it, how it may actually even help you in a different environment as well? Because whilst we're talking about Sikh heritage here, we do know that there's a lot of individuals who work in different kind of fields who find the things we're doing very, very kind of useful. And, you know, Taran, I know for a fact that there's been a few companies who have been kind of engaging with yourself who are not necessarily related to Sikh heritage, but really want to know what the technology can do for other people as well, essentially. I mean, that sounds about right from the engagement you've had from companies, for instance. You're on mute.
Sorry, could you repeat that? Yeah.
Yeah, I'm just saying, in terms of the companies you've been working with as well.
Yeah.
So it's not necessarily the Sikh heritage aspect that we're looking at. It's all different kind of facets.
Yeah. So I worked for an engineering company for 10 years, and I was right at the beginning when the first VR headsets came in. We were already doing. So anyway, a bit of background. So I did my master's in computer-aided design, and my thesis was on the use of computer games for the architectural industry. And what I found when I did my study was that there were three problems that the architecture industry had. Was the lack of training for the professionals in game technology. The second thing was the perception of games technology as being like a childish thing, something that people, for entertainment, it's not for professional use. And the third thing was the professionals within the architecture industry who were making the decisions, they just didn't have the knowledge about these types of technologies. And that was like about 11 years ago. And fast forward now, all the games companies are kind of, you know, on board now, and they've got different licensing models which kind of allow different types of companies. Before, they were only geared towards games companies. Now they've got like licenses which are based on how much money you make and, you know, what type of organization you are. A lot of the software you can get access to for free as long as your earnings are below a certain amount. So accessibility has been improved. Awareness has been improved about it, but a lot of the companies that I'm working with personally, that I consult with in the automotive industry and also within the architectural industry, I mean, one of the things that we started off doing was doing lighting simulations for environments, and that was a massive thing because people are spending a lot of money on relighting their large buildings, and energy cost was a big thing. So being able to kind of visualize the environment, be able to see different lights switching on and off, and seeing the feedback on how much energy is being used. So things like that is being used. A lot of architectural visualization done in VR now, you know, design review, automotive industry. We've been creating environments for kind of the automotive industry to be able to kind of display their products, display their new kind of designs. And also what's happening now in VR as well is like multi-user, you know, environments where a couple of people can come in and look at an object and write notes and, you know, look at things. So there's all that kind of stuff that's going on, and you know, it's really picking up at the moment, really, really well. But you'll find that certain industries, I find that with heritage and museums, they're really lagging behind. Whereas obviously with engineering and stuff, they're like really far ahead and, you know, using the technology, they're actually using it, you know, within their normal work practices. Whereas within the museums at the moment, they're kind of like a bit reluctant. They maybe use it a bit gimmickly and not really kind of grasping it and running with it and seeing what it can do and experimenting with it.
No, absolutely true. Do we have any other questions at all? Does anybody want to ask any questions? Okay, so that essentially is almost the end of our seminar. It's literally bang on an hour actually. So we've kind of succinctly kind of talked about everything in terms of what we wanted to. I am going to just quickly just share my screen for 1 second and just show you some kind of contacts in terms of if you want to get in contact with us. Our email address is info@sikhmuseum.org.uk. Our website to actually see these objects is anglosikhmuseum.com. The main website is sikhmuseum.org.uk. We are on the various kind of social media platforms as well, Facebook, Insta, etc. We do have about 50 videos. Yes, let me just repeat, about 50 videos related to Sikh history and heritage encompassing these technologies on our YouTube channel. And you can join our mailing list as well. So they're the key ways in order for you to actually kind of get in contact with us. So like I said, we are going to actually make sure that this is available for everybody on Facebook and on our YouTube, possibly YouTube account as well. So that would be great. So I think that's it. Is there anything else you want to say, Taran, just before we finish off?
No, it's great. Yeah, we'll be doing a few more kind of video seminars. So if you've got any suggestions, if there's anything specific that you want us to cover, feel free to send us a message. We're on Facebook and online. You've got the contact details from Gurinder there. But yeah, thanks for attending.
Okay, thanks very much, and thanks very much for taking some time out. Stay safe during the circumstances, and hopefully we can engage with you guys at some point. You've got contact details, so we look very much in terms of actually seeing you again. Thank you very much. Thank you.
It was great. Well done.
Well done.
Thank you. Bye.
Thanks, thanks, Bill. Great stuff.
Very good.
Great.
Thanks. Thank you.
Good. Right. Well, we can.
Okay, guys.
Great.
Thank you very much.
Thank you.